For those around the table, just a reminder, when you're speaking, please turn on your microphone. Hit the push button, make sure you speak into the microphone so everybody can hear you online. For those participating in Zoom, please state your name when you're making a comment or asking a question. That's very helpful. And then also the MAG, wait, where am I at here? Okay, for the call to the order, the MAG public comment process will allow members of the, hold on one second, please. All right, we're going to move into agenda item number 2, the call to the audience. This is where it's an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the MAG jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items and items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. I've received no requests to speak for the call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting are shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Gordon, I haven't received anything. Have you received anything?
We did not receive any online comments.
Thank you. All right, moving into agenda item number 3. This is our next agenda item for approving or for going through the meeting minutes from September 4th, 2024. I know it was a while ago. It's kind of awkward going through them now in January, but Gordon's going to go ahead and pull up those meeting minutes. Hopefully everybody, I expect everybody had an opportunity at some point to review those meeting minutes and look for any corrections that may need to be made. Yeah, thank you, Gordon. It was brought to my attention that we do have a few new people that have never been part of this committee before. Robert Fields, are you on the line? Do we have a surprise here? How about Chris Hamilton with Tollison?
I am here.
Chris, you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. I am Chris Hamilton, city engineer here at Tollison. I've been here about 3 years, but I've been around the transportation engineering community for quite some time. Previously was not a part of this committee, but worked closely with Mr. Badowich, who's been on this committee for quite some time.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
And then Arvid, you have an alternate, I believe. Robert is your alternate. Does that ring a bell?
Robert? That's me. Yeah, I'm Robert Pizzorno.
Yeah, Robert, you mind giving yourself a quick introduction?
Absolutely. My name is Robert Pizzorno. I'm the Government and Community Affairs Manager for Tilson. We do fiber optic cable deployments, but I also sit on the board of Azuka, and that's who I'm with Arvid, is Azuka representing that group.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
All right. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity, or I expect everybody had an opportunity to look at the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or questions that committee members may have on the meeting minutes? All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, Jose Rodriguez, I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Jose. How about a second motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Warren White. I will motion to approve as well.
Thank you, Warren. All right, we'll move into a roll call vote.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Let's start with ADOT.
Good afternoon, Mike and Blaker here. Yes.
All right, Avondale. Amadale is not present yet. Buckeye,
Good afternoon, Josh Ford here. Yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage. El Mirage not present yet. Lawrence. Florence not present. Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear, Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria, Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise, Tempe, and let's see, Youngtown.
Yes.
Youngtown's yes. Thank you. Looks like the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everyone, for attending and to this meeting. I appreciate it. We're going to move into agenda item number 4. This is a presentation on Verify in-transit concrete management product. I'll go ahead and I'd like the Verify guys to go ahead and introduce themselves, or whoever's going to be providing the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Roberts. I'm the Director of R&D for Verify.
Right, Gordon will pull up a presentation and Mark will lead the presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead. How about it?
Excellent. Like I said, my name is Mark Roberts. I work for Verify, which is an IoT for ReadyMix. So IoT stands for Internet of Things. Everyone actually knows what this is, like your watch, your phone, all of those things are Internet of Things. The biggest example from a kind of big things out there is like Uber. Uber is a Internet of Things when all those devices are connected to the internet. The idea of this was to bring that kind of technology to the ReadyMix industry. And can you go to the next slide, please, Gordon? And the next one, we'll just skip that. And the reason why is that the realities of concrete quality control are very difficult, right? So what you have on the screen here is the new bridge that's going over the Hudson River in New York City, or north of New York City. It was a huge project. 182,000 yards of concrete was poured. And this project actually won an award for its QC program that they provided when it was testing 1 out of every 20 trucks for how good the quality of the concrete was. In general, that is an exceptional amount of testing done on a concrete. In so doing, though, they pulled 3,640 slumps, and that was a big deal. In reality, though, they tested only approximately 38 yards or something like that of actual concrete, considering each load of concrete that was tested only pulled 1/4 of a yard. So what you're looking at here is a very large structure without a lot of testing, total amount of testing. So the idea for Verify was to make it so that you could increase the amount of testing that you were getting, the amount of information you were getting on every single load of concrete, instead of relying on spot checks or even a dedicated QC program. What that allows you to do is then have more information across all of these, all of the loads of concrete, and know exactly what's happening to everything. You just go to the next slide, please. So the idea there was to build a system that you would mount, a computerized system that you would mount to a concrete truck that would basically monitor, measure, and manage said concrete. So monitor would be like where it is, how fast the truck is going, GPS, that kind of thing. Measure was the complicated part in that you are actually measuring the quality control of the concrete. We measure what's called slump, which is the fluidity of concrete. It's a proxy for how much water is in the concrete. And there are specifications for when you pour concrete of what the slump has to be. And that's why things like curbs have really low fluidity, and like a parking garage or something like that, you can have a lot higher. To do so, if you have that level of control and measure on that, you can then really change the way things are done around concrete. You have that visibility, and every single load of concrete for every single minute is then recorded. This allows for a bunch of values for the concrete producer, but for this audience, what it really allows for is the visibility into what is going into the structures that you're building. So you know every single load instead of just the ones. Also, from a sustainability point of view, you can reduce the amount of revolutions on the drum, things like that. You can have the quality of the concrete that you're expecting without as much of a carbon impact from concrete. Just go to the next slide. How we did this was we built a system, like I said, that is a computer on a truck that is outfitted with many sensors to measure the quality of the concrete. Those sensors that put out outputs, and it's connected into other systems that our concrete producers already have. That would be like batch and dispatch. Basically, like it is giving the recipe of the concrete is being, and what is being made is on the top right-hand side. And then you're actually using this, the system to measure what's actually happening when you make that recipe. So currently how it is that they make a recipe and they expect it to taste the same every single time. And we all know, as anyone who's cooked a meal, it's not always the way it works. So allows you to test effectively every single load of concrete. Just go to the next slide, please. So, like I said, it measures and manages concrete. That measurement was a difficult thing to do, but managing is also very difficult. What that allows it to do is to add the correct amount of chemicals or water needed to make that concrete hit specifications. So having the ability to add those fluids on board allows you to have complete control. Instead of making concrete and then shipping it and having it delivered, you are then making concrete the entire way it's being delivered to the job site. So it extends the time at which you can affect the concrete's quality all the way to the job site and then on the job site until it actually pours out. Why you care about that is the traffic can be extraordinarily variable, and you're having a concrete which has a very low shelf life product. Think of concrete as a shipping industry with a product shelf life of about 90 minutes. And the differences between 5:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the morning on traffic around here, at least I can tell you in Boston, is a ridiculous difference. So you're shipping from the same plant to the same location. It can change the timing and therefore the quality of the concrete. If you can manage the entire way, you're now affecting that concrete all the way to the job site, and you're having the same quality every single time. Make sense? All right. This is the systems that are on there. We have two different displays. So if anyone's actually seen concrete being poured out here recently, there's a lot of trucks in the Phoenix area that have the system on there. If there's a red numbers on the back of the truck, that is the Verify system, and it's actually giving the display already. We just have a display for the driver, so he can interface with the concrete after he's arrived at the site, so he knows what's going on, and all of that information is then collected and sent to the cloud so that others can look at it. Like anytime, anyone can look at what the quality of the concrete is across from when it happened, if it happened 2 years ago, or if it's happening right now, they can see it. Go to the next slide, please. So this is where the super nerd in the room gets going a little bit. So I apologize right now. This is where it gets a little exciting. So to do what we're talking about doing, you have to use this idea called rheology. And rheology is basically the study of how materials or liquids move. All right. So concrete is getting much more complicated. I will say that as someone who's been in the concrete industry a long time, because we're trying to do really new things with concrete that you couldn't do before. You can do underwater concrete. You can easily get 10,000 PSI that when I started would be very hard to do. And you're trying to get more sustainable. So you're reducing cementitious contents or replacing them with other materials that can supplementary cementitious materials. All of that means that level of complication is increased dramatically. And what we used to do is we used to rely on the drivers of the concrete truck to ensure the quality of the concrete. With that level of complication, it is becoming impossible for them to do that job. So we're building these systems to do that. So these systems are now built, and if you're seeing this thing turning around in the corner there, what that really is tying the relationship of how much energy it takes to move the drum and the speed of the drum and what the slump of the concrete is, what's the fluidity of the concrete. All of this stuff is based on this concept of rheology, which is how material moves. There's a very big difference. Anyone who's tried to get ketchup out of an old glass bottle knows you can't get it moving unless you apply energy to it. That is very similar to concrete. Concrete stops moving when you stop applying energy to it. Not like water. You pour water on a table, it'll continue to flow. You pour ketchup on a table, it'll stop at a certain point unless you apply energy. Concrete, the reason why that is it has what's called the yield stress. That yield stress is related to slump, and that's how we do a lot of data science and machine learning to build the algorithms that relate what the concrete is to what the slump is going to be based on the pressure in front of it. It's a super nerd way of going. I understand that. What it really does is there's a lot of data that we have built into the system that allows us to do this. We have about 17 million data points because we've had the system out for a while now, collecting data in the passively collecting data that allows us to accurately predict slump across a wide variety of kind of concrete trucks and mixed designs. So it means no matter what you're putting into the structures, we'll be able to measure what that is and give a quality report on each one of them. Go to the next slide, please. So this is a really important slide. Right now, how concrete is managed is the slump of the concrete, which is how the fluidity is consistently going down. So what they'll do is they'll bring the fluidity really high, and then they'll let it drop, and hope it's within target when they arrive on site. And then they pour out. Or they'll add water, or they'll add chemical, and then they'll pour out. When you use Verify, it's a very different idea in that since you have that whole time of being able to affect the concrete, you bring the concrete slump up, and then as it slowly starts to drop, you add a little bit more fluid and add a little bit more fluid as you go. So you maintain, so it doesn't matter how long the commute is. It doesn't matter, it's always right from the get-go. So the histogram on the right-hand slide actually illustrates what happens when you use the system and when you don't. So the blue on the bottom is when it's called in ghost mode, which is effectively us just measuring what the customers were doing prior to having Verify installed. So we actually look at it, and then when you see the red, you can see that the histogram dramatically tightens up. It's because we're affecting that concrete the entire time. And once you have that data, you can actually start to look at how, when you're too high and when you're too low and all things like that. But that reduction in variability basically means that what you're putting into the structures that you're in charge of, you have complete control over what it is. And it comes out as it's designed to be every single time. You know, next slide. So I've been in this industry for a long time, but I'm at kind of an interesting intersection of this, where we have material scientists that work for Verify as well as IoT people. So that's like data nerds and material science nerds. And we also have people who have been working in the field, like the people in the back of the room, who know concrete really, really well and what our customers need. So that level, putting those three things together was what launched Verify to be able to actually do what we do. Now I will say it has completely changed because of the amount of data that we have. Machine learning and all those things that you hear about AI and all the stuff that you hear about in the world, it relies on data as oil. Like machines don't run without oil. AI does not run without data. We are producing that data to be able to make the systems better every single day. So it automatically feeds, and every single night it's actually updating how to measure the slumps on every truck that we have it on. So it easily does it with no human intervention. It's learning and it's fixing itself every single night. Go to the next slide. You can just skip this one. This is for the hardcore nerds in the room. So this should start to play. If you can't, can you just press on the button one more time? So I want to talk about how much data we're really collecting. What this is doing is basically showing from the beginning of time how many, there's 4 different things we're looking at here with slump at discharge, what the temperature of the concrete is, how much water is being added, and how many total revolutions are. And you can see that we're pretty much spread across the United States collecting this data all the time. And what it does is you'll see those numbers are starting to go up at a pretty exponential rate. It's really showing that we have this big wealth of data that allows us to make these changes on. And the last slide, I think, is the next one. So this is like the counter of what the first slide was with the Mario Cuomo Bridge. This is a project that's being done in the UK right now. This is the HS2 project, which is a huge new rail project that they're putting around London. So they originally wanted to test every single load of concrete for slump really. And that was causing them to have a long time because they had to have testers there doing these every single load. And they had to throw away a lot of concrete. This is a really big project. in wheelbarrows of concrete, they were going to throw away 18,000 yards of concrete individually pulled off, which is a lot of material waste, a lot of CO2 waste and things like that. So they contacted us in a way to say, can you replace this physical testing with a machine? This is where we already had the system. So we worked with them. So now we are no longer, sad that you can't see the last one. We're no longer testing every single load of concrete. They're testing every 20th load of concrete. So again, they've gone to 1 in 20, which is the same thing that the Mario Cuomo Bridge have, but they have the other 95% of the information already in a data source that they can trust and use. What you're looking at the bottom is the fact that they pulled, to make sure that we worked, they pulled 16,000 slumps, which is an exorbitant amount of data, and to prove that we're accurate within the standards, which were on the last slide, which is that we're 95% of the time, we're exactly measuring what the person on the ground is in the wheelbarrow. I was told to keep it to 15 minutes. That is 15 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna grant, if we can go back, I'd like to grant you some time to discuss the one slide about slump. You said something about nerding out on slump.
Yep, go back up one more.
You intrigued me with that.
So what this is this is the ASTM that you use to measure slump. There's a precision document that comes with that. Basically what this is saying is on the right-hand side, the bottom right-hand side is a multiple laboratory precision. That means if two people pull concrete from the same wheelbarrow, so not the same truck or anything like that, from the same wheelbarrow, that is the difference that they are allowed to see between two results. It's called the D2S limit. The fancy way of saying 95% of the time, you'll be within 2 standard deviations, and the standard deviations on the bottom left-hand side. What it's really saying is if you have a 6.5 inch slump, if someone pulls a 6.5 and someone pulls an 8, that is an acceptable difference between the numbers. I bring this up because what happens with us is we are a digital display and it says 5.25 on the side of the truck. And then someone pulls a 5 and they say, you're off. And I say, well, no, because who's off? One, is it off at all? There is no such thing as a difference. So that basically shows there is no technical difference between a 5.25 and a 5. That's literally measuring this much out of a 12-inch cone. So it's not a big deal. I bring this up a lot just because that does allow for a lot of discussions to happen. What I will say is machine is a machine. It's like the Terminator. It does it every single time the same way all day. Doesn't matter if it's 5 o'clock and it's Miller time on a Friday, it's Monday morning. It doesn't care. It does it the same way every single time. Humans are, let's just say, less reliable.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much. I think it's appropriate to open it up for questions. And,
Absolutely.
I know I have a question right out of the gate. The information that you guys are accumulating during transit and all that, is that visible to the inspection staff on site?
It can be available to the inspection staff on site.
Can be. Is that
Yeah.
through an app? Or?
Yep. Yeah, it'd be an app. So it would be something you would work with the ready mix producer that you're working with to guarantee you access to that data, right? So that would be something you could have. Or there's ways you can do. We have APIs. So actually, if you go down 2 more slides, sorry to do that. We have APIs, which are basically how computers talk to each other. So you can just get the information that way if you need it.
But there is also a slump display on the truck.
On the truck, on the side, and on the truck, it says it right there, big, bold, 3-inch tall, 4-inch tall letter.
Place the hydraulic slump meter.
It's a 100% replacement of the hydraulic slump meter. So the hydraulic slump meter is it's a great idea that has a really big flaw in the fact that if you speed the drum up a little bit, that number moves. Yeah. And then you have to say, okay, driver, is it exactly at 3 RPM and all that? It's very, very difficult. So this takes that into account. You could just one more slide down. Yeah.
So
So
the truck's displaying slump only, but all the other information is available through an app or through
Yep.
that supplier. To your knowledge, to date, in Maricopa County, what suppliers are using Verify?
want to do this? You want me to do this? All right. So it's Cemex is using it. Arizona Materials is using it. Core is using it, and Desert Ready Mix is using it, and soon to be Rock Solid is using it.
Some big names in there. Congratulations. All right.
About 70% of the market is using it.
The question was, what percentage of the market was that? And the answer is 70.
My question is, how
about
much more does
70.
it cost from the contractor?
It's not
It usually gets passed down to us, you know.
Yeah, so so for one, we sell it to the ready mix producer. We don't, they usually save enough money without passing that cost on to others. There's a lot of value in operation savings because they have visibility across the entire operation, so they know which drivers are taking their extra time, things like that, so they can save a lot of money in both operation times and in quality control.
So you were talking about adding additional fluid and whatnot throughout. I assume that's transportation or through transit, you're adding fluid?
Yep, and it's automatic, so it's an autonomous system, so the truck will add the truck, end quote, the Verify will add the admixture or water that is required in transit while it's driving.
The trucks have can have admin.
So they do. All the trucks here in the valley have it.
I can't tell you how many times I have something show up. It's like,
Not even close?
yeah.
Right. So that not even going to work out is a big problem in the fact that each person's looking at, every driver has their own eyeballs. They're all calibrated their own way. And they show up and they think they have a 5. They really have a 3. And you can't use that concrete.
So not that it matters, but this really just takes a lot of pressure off of that operator, that driver too, because the driver's
Absolutely.
not adding any, right?
The driver does not, they are given, permissions are granted to what they can do with the concrete. The system can do everything automatically and the driver has no involvement whatsoever. So the idea was to bring quality of control back to people who are trained in quality control of concrete. So that goes back to allowing the QC to say, how is this concrete measured or managed? Not measured. We do the measurement. They do the management.
Interesting.
I have a question. So is the intent to eliminate slump testing or reduce slump testing?
My thinking on this is that it's an augmentation to slump testing.
Because we live by standards. And
Absolutely.
I have
It's-
to write a spec for replacing concrete. I'm going to put in the same testing I'm going to normally have.
Right.
You're just identifying that you're going to get a better quality product.
What we also say is that, if you have 100 loads that are doing, you're going to put a spec in that's going to say, give me, X number of samples. We're going to give you every single load that has out there. We'll tell you what the slump is on all of them.
Is there an ASTM or AASHTO test associated with the correlation?
No, there's not. So that is something that we're working on. And yes, of course. So that what is
That's the problem.
right. And that's why I'm saying we're not expecting you to replace the tests. We're saying we're going to augment the data that you're already getting with more data from everything.
It sounds to me, Peter, like this is not more so, but really helps the supplier cut down on wasted loads, saving natural resources because they're not showing up with a 5 when they requested a 2.
I have no problem with correlation testing. If I, as an engineer, can hang my hat on it and say, here's an ASTM that
Yep,
shows
absolutely.
the correlation. We do this. I mean, the shirt I'm wearing is for a company that does almost everything. It's not who I work for, but they do everything based on correlations, thermal testing, tip testing. And that would be great if there was the ability to have this as a supplemental test to put in the specification, which then applies to what we're talking about here. People to adapt to the new technology.
Yeah, correlation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we've done that. We have 150,000 slump tests that have built the system up. So we have dozens of those correlations. They are not official yet. And that's one thing that we have decided that we're going to work with an ASTM to try to get it to work. Because without it, you'll struggle.
I have one other question. Who at this time is requiring Verify to be any municipalities or government agencies or?
There's no one who is required, except for that HS2 project. That was not a municipality. That was a private contractor that was saying like, I require. We have lots of private contractors who do that. We do not have any municipalities that say thou shalt have.
So you haven't seen anything in project specifications that
Correct.
require this type of monitoring?
Not from a municipality. We've had it from contractors who demand.
So maybe Circle K or Quick Trip wants to build something.
Yeah.
They would,
Yep.
okay, it would be in maybe their specifications.
Correct.
One
Open
thing
up,
though, Gene,
this
Jeff
is-
Hearn, one thing I would mention though, Gene, is it has been added to ASTM C94, which
Yep.
is the specification for ready mix concrete. One of the major specifications that's utilized all over the world. We mention that in our MAG specifications. We've taken bits and pieces out of that specification and incorporated it to MAG about batching tolerances and about slump testing and about the tolerances on that and about temperatures and delivery times. All that stuff we've taken out of that. It's mentioned in it's now part of ASTM C94 that says agreement between the purchaser and the supplier, systems like this can be utilized to verify slump, to verify quality of the concrete, so
And
on and
fluid
so
addition.
forth. So it has been codified into some industry standards, utilizing this equipment, since it's been
Yeah, I'd be very
utilized
curious.
for a decade or more.
Yeah, about so. Yeah, a little
A
bit.
decade or more
Temperature
in other
makes
parts of the
sense.
country.
You can easily get temperature data. People that actually record all this, we monitor it, and
Yep.
so we'd be very interested to be able to get more real-time data. It saves time in the field on placement and waiting for testing.
For sure. We have, independent studies. Missouri DOT did a study. Take a look at it. And I can send that to you. Kamal, I did that.
Any of our online viewers have any questions?
Hello, this is Josh Ford, City of Buckeye. I have two questions. So one, does this require the use of your trucks, or are you able to outfit other manufacturers' trucks with your sensors? Then my second question is, as far as calibrating it or checking it with manual tests, so your system's spitting out the data for each load, but then there'll be that manual check every 20 units or whatever the frequency is. What typically occurs if you start seeing a consistent pattern of discrepancy there? Is there some type of procedure for pulling the truck offline, recalibrating things, or how does that typically play out?
Sure. Well, I failed to describe it adequately, so thank you for that. The first one is we install our sensors on our customers' trucks. So we go to, say, Desert Ready Mix and install on all of their trucks. They're not our trucks. They're the customer's trucks, and we install a sensor package on all kinds of trucks. So that's your first question. Your second question is, great question about discrepancies. The biggest thing on discrepancies are we have built systems in to automatically fix those discrepancies. That's the AI engine that we've built originally, was if we start to see something, the system automatically corrects. So the slumps are being entered. We have an app, so you can enter slumps information that feeds back into Verify, which does a nice feedback loop, which we fix any kind of problems. We're constantly measuring the rheology of the concrete. So if the rheology of that mix is changing, we change the calibration curve to fix it. The biggest thing that can happen if a truck has a problem, most of the time it's a truck-based problem of hydraulic fluids, rollers, or and times there's buildup. We will also detect the amount of buildup in a concrete truck to tell you that this truck is getting to be inaccurate and dangerous. And that takes like 6,000 pounds of buildup before that accuracy starts to suffer. But those are the main reasons why you can have a single truck go out. Now, a mixed design going out, like I said, we change. When the rheology changes, we change with it. So we should not have full mixed designs going out.
Well, I understand what you're saying about your truck will adapt and change is needed throughout the way, but I think my point larger is that sensors can sometimes become flawed, right? Or send erroneous data. And so if you're getting the indication that perhaps your sensors are flawed or sending erroneous data because it's not matching up to maybe consecutive manual checks and there's that discrepancy, how is that handled?
Oh, great. So the cool part about it is the sensors are connected to a CAN network, which is a computer area network, which is a fancy way of saying that they have a heartbeat and a measurement on every single one of the sensors feeding into a central computer. So if one of those sensors goes off, they'll rail or they'll die or they'll start to error count. We actually fix them, right? The Verifies knows that they're broken and we'll go and fix them. If a particular sensor is going wrong on a particular truck, we have ways. We have every time the truck quote wakes up in the morning, so you ignition the truck on and the truck starts to spin, we do what's called an empty drum test, because that's the only time we know for absolute certain that the truck is empty. And if that empty drum dramatically changes from day to day, we look. And the computer basically warns us that something has happened between yesterday and today that has changed the sensors on the truck. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great questions.
Okay. So,
Anyone else have any other questions? Before we move on? Thank you for that presentation.
problem. Thank you very much.
Very informative. We appreciate it. And you're more than welcome to stick around for the rest of the meeting, or you can depart. It's up to you. All right, we're going to move into agenda item number 5, cases carried forward from 2024. Case 24-12 was to rewrite section 626 for corrosion protective coating of sanitary sewer manholes and access structures. This one was being sponsored by Matthew Bryan from City of Phoenix. Matthew, you want to kind of give an update on this case?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I have Pat Womack on. He's going to do the update here for us.
Great. Thank you, Pat.
Thank-
The floor is
Hello.
yours.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. We took all the comments that were provided back to us and we implemented the minor changes in the specification. So we're hoping to move forward with getting this up to vote to be implemented to replace the existing 626 spec.
Yeah, Pat, I appreciate that. I know you took a lot of our comments into consideration from Glendale. This is from my staff. This has been in front of my staff. I've gone over it. The latest and greatest modifications that you guys provided. I appreciate it. I think it looks good in my opinion. I'd like to get some other feedback from other members of the committee before moving forward with putting it up for action. So at this time, has anybody else with the committee, has anybody had any comments or questions regarding the section 626 revision? I'm not hearing anything. So what I would suggest, Pat and Matthew, what I think what we can do here is put it up for discussion at next meeting and possible action. Gordon, can we put it on for possible action next meeting?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, so that'll kind of start the clock for getting it voted on, and it'll really put the pressure on everybody to really go over it and make sure that it's good the way it's written, or they're good with it the way it's written. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We'll put it up for discussion and possible action for next meeting, next month.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Matthew, for putting the work into this, you and the City of Phoenix team. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 6, case 24-13. This is proposed revisions to section 620, the cast in place pipe, which right out of the gate, we need to switch. We talked about changing that to cast in place concrete pipe, correct? Because there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. I guess before we get into too much of that, you want to go ahead and give us any updates on it, Warren?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as mentioned, I think we, in our last meeting before the break, we agreed that we wanted to use the acronym CIPP, CI cast in place.
CIPCP.
CP, that's right.
We already have a,
Introducing
yeah,
cast
we
in-
are,
cured in place pipe, so it's not going to be
right.
confused with that. So, so it sounds like there may be some additional changes in order to accommodate that and throughout various specs. And we talked about maybe having that added, which we'll probably talk about in the miscellaneous corrections, right?
Yeah, possibly we could put there.
Let's talk about that when we get there. But, and then also in the abbreviations, we'll have to make a correction there. And then I'll bring up the question, do we want to introduce a definition for cured in place pipe in that acronym too?
I would be in support of that 100%. Yeah, for CIPP, which is cured in place pipe,
Right. And then this.
juxtaposed to CIPCP, cast in place concrete pipe.
Correct. Okay.
So yeah, there'll be, as you discussed, with the change of the acronym, it's gonna generate some other modifications in various parts of
Okay.
the publication.
And I can put that together for the miscellaneous correction if we agree to that.
Yeah, I think we could probably move that, those little minor corrections over to miscellaneous corrections. Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. And then moving on from that,
But
go ahead.
the definition for cured in place pipe, because it is mentioned in MAG 610 for extra protection.
That's it. That's the only.
Yeah,
place.
that's the only place it's mentioned. But we'll go ahead and do a definition for that, probably under miscellaneous correction also. I think that's fair. We'll put that up for miscellaneous correction then. All right.
Thank you. All
Lot
right.
going on.
Just kind of a real quick recap from this case, this carry forward case from last year. It was introduced, working with Blue Corps, as an update of this spec, since it has been used for quite some time for underground storage, retention systems. So that's where it began, and just kind of updating the general section. And then we kind of got into looking at the spec beyond that, just to make sure it was all current to today's practice. And then we got into the fact that really aren't doing any moisture, so we thoroughly moistening the expansive soils, and so there's some practice there that we agreed that wasn't part of the current practice. That led to some more discussion about how to handle if you do encounter expansive clays. So we had added that statement there, which led to more discussion in this forum and in the water and sewer working group, where that Blue Corps reached out to a geotech and an engineer to get a little more feedback, and working with City of Phoenix too on their comments to make sure we're all on the same page there. So at this point, we've got the comments from the geotech basically about the overburden and our types of clays here, and history with Blue Corps. They haven't encountered any problems with that. And the geotech's determination was that the expansive clays here really aren't enough to overcome that overburden, right?
Correct. Yeah, the
Yeah.
concern that I had brought up
Yeah.
is on shallow applications with that granular backfill material, if you don't treat the expansive soils underneath the pipe, is there potential for movement after the installation? And that's what the geotech, I think, Alpha?
I think so.
Yeah,
I have that somewhere here.
he provided a comment that based on the soils that we have here in the valley, that may not be a concern. We don't have something that can provide that much overburden to move a piece of pipe with 2 or 3 feet of fill on top of it. So
It's lazy soil. It's not as active.
I guess so.
I brought up the concern because we deal with it a lot, where it moves driveways that are 12 inches thick.
You know, back in the day, when we were blowing and going, we were over excavating and throwing dirt in to fill it in and laying pipe like crazy. And some of those systems, I live in a system I put in 40 years ago that is still intact and we're functioning perfectly. And the way it got put in was a little sketchy back in those days. So
Very
I think what
forgiving.
you're talking about is probably not that significant. What you're doing there.
So that's where it is. I think I need to regroup with the Blue Corps and discuss how we're going to handle that statement. And then we should be close.
Excuse me, are you proposing then to eliminate the over X?
That's what I think we need to determine
Yeah.
in that discussion.
I mean, without having a specific geotech report for each project,
Yeah.
you need to err on the side of conservatism on this. And just be cautious.
I understand.
Yeah, you could always put language in there to refer to geotech report.
Yeah, if there's a geotech report that
If,
would counter it, I would think you'd want to default and then, but if you've got geotechnical analysis that shows it's not an issue, then wouldn't have to worry about the overexit. That,
Yeah.
I hate to have a blanket one that is unconservative.
No, that's a good point.
I hear you. Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Minor wordsmithing on that line. If you're going to keep it, I think you can just shorten that sentence. It says, when encountered the expansive glaze, you can get rid of the two words. You get rid of the second time saying expansive, or the first time saying expansive glaze.
Agreed. Okay.
Thank you for that feedback, Peter. We have any questions or comments from any other committee members?
You mentioned that you were going to talk to Blue Core. Juarez is also doing the cast in place too. I believe they bought the system from Blue Core.
Oh, okay.
So, and Juarez, right? Or what,
Okay.
any which way, but they're also doing cast in place too.
Okay.
Got another player. They have a project right in Glendale that they're doing right there, not too far from, stadium, I believe, but.
Who's the who's the contractor?
Juarez is also doing cast in place too, or, you know, they're doing the cast in place, underground.
Yeah, it must be on-site land development or.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, they're. So,
Good to know.
just that, if you want another reference.
That helps. Thanks.
All right, how about our online viewers? We have any comments or questions? Give everybody the opportunity to chime in. All right, Warren, thank you for that updated update on 2413. We're gonna move into new cases for 2025. You should have seen in your packet that there was a correction that was requested. I think that was requested by Logan Simpson Design. That's ring a bell, Gordon?
Yeah, we had some questions just from some contractor, landscape contractor, and Wayne Colbank with Logan Simpson, who wrote this section originally, provided some feedback, and so that's what we have here. And I believe he also emailed Peter about this.
So Peter, you want to give an update on, give some background information on this correction for the minor modification?
As I understood from the email, the question came on talking about the specifics of having particle sizes larger that may be utilized if they're broken down during the rolling process. And the question was, do we need to have that if we've got a sieve? It is what it is when you get it delivered. That was my understanding of what they were saying. Again, generally, if you get a sample and you take it to the lab and you get a sieve done, it will normally break it down anyway, so the material is what it is. You're not looking for a clump of stuff. So I would consider it unnecessary information as long as the material already had been pre-qualified.
So the sentence in question is particles larger than 2 inches, which will not be broken in the process of rolling and tamping during construction, shall not be used.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, I have a
I mean,
sieve analysis or a gradation I have to meet right here. on
Yeah,
the chart.
I don't, that's saying that it's a particle that's larger than it anyway, so I have a sieve that says it's larger, or this is the particle limit. I'm not sure what the purpose of saying that you're gonna allow something, you're not gonna take something that's too large. We already have a sieve that says you're not.
Right, and if we do want, I noticed, who was it? It was Chris, he was with the development company. He responded to the email as well. You saw that, Peter, but he attached a gradation which showed, it basically showed more of a 1 inch. I'm trying to find the gradation here. It showed, I think it showed, from what I recall, 3/4 inch being retained for general use, opposed to 100% passing. What that would have been the 1/2 inch screen, nothing retained on the 3/4. He said that's the industry standard. So is there, oh, here it is here. He's showing, oh, they're actually passing 89% on the 1 inch. So that means they're retaining some 3/4, and then they're passing 76 on the 3/4 inch. So I don't know how all that plays in, except for the fact that if a municipality wants something other than what's called out on this sheet, our designer can,
Yeah, this is
amend
just,
that.
yeah, this is just a gradation. It
Right.
is not all gradations.
Right. So it's just a general use gradation.
Default gradation, yeah.
It could, I mean, I agree that it could be opened up, but it's really project specific. I know we in Glendale like to use the 3/4 inch. Actually, we like to retain 3/4 inch, especially in our median areas. So when the blowers are blowing, they're not blowing all the rock out in the parking lot or out into the road or whatever it is.
Yeah, I was not sure what was meant by some of the other attachments that were sent with it because it seemed like the question here was fairly straightforward on something that's too large isn't going to be accepted. We already know that. By providing other gradations, yes, there are other gradations. I don't know if the intent was to get rid of gradations. I don't think that's what we'd want to do because you don't want to have just a gap graded material for that specific reason, or just the opposite. You get something that's 100% passing the 3/4 inch and nothing passing, or 5% passing the 1/4 inch or something. The ball bearing type of cover wouldn't be acceptable either. So
what
some general type of gradation.
What I got out of this was there's two separate points here. One is deleting the sentence, and then the other one is possibly later on that email alluded to possibly modifying the gradation table somewhat more to fit what the industry is producing. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, if somebody wishes to provide that, I mean,
Right.
it's up to you guys. Do you need more gradations for materials?
I did get a message from Chris the one that you're discussing. And he said he is planning to join the outside right-of-way working group, so he can maybe discuss it further in the next meeting.
That would be
what
great.
his
That would be
issue
good.
is.
Yeah, that would, to me, wouldn't be, this is a minor change. We're talking about here. If we want to go to additional gradations, that'd be a regular case to consider. And would we want to look at different gradations for inside and outside the right of way? I'm not sure.
Mr. Chairman, that you have that sentence in the final sentence there in paragraph 2, basically saying the engineer can waive minor deviations of the gradation requirements and specifications, the waivers of benefit to the project. So you could, obviously, the engineer could say, I'm going to accept a different gradation.
Right.
If I wanted to, if it's project specific, if it was something we wanted to use without having to make any other changes, keeping in mind, this is just kind of the default.
It's a default,
kind of
exactly.
scenario here, but you've given the ability for engineer to basically use whatever he wants to use if that's what he specifies.
Right. So now the question is, should that sentence, particles larger than 2 inches, which will not be broken by the process of rolling and tamping during construction, shall not be used?
It's like thing.
I'm reading this more as maybe an agglomeration of materials. It could be,
But if it,
moisture, it could be something like that. And in the normal process of putting it down and moving it into place or whatever those larger
Clay
things
or whatever
break
that's
up.
holding it
but if I
break
took
up,
that
right? It's
sample
not-
to the lab,
Yeah,
I can take the sample to the lab, it'll break down readily. So
Right.
Exactly.
it's like
Going through it,
ABC could. have the same
going through the
thing.
sieve
Fine.
shakers, it would do the same thing as
Yeah.
break up those agglomerate.
So
Yeah,
it
either
would still-
calcium holding ABC together or maybe clay holding.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
no different than any other material. It doesn't say it won't meet the specification. It's just, that's a judgment call in the field. If you
Yeah.
think that it's not going to meet the specification, you gotta take a sample and test it then.
Yeah, you're right. When you take it to a lab, if there's a
Yep.
conglomerate,
It'd break it down.
then yeah, they break it over a 4 or whatever they do.
Yeah, I mean, just the process breaks it down.
So I would agree. I don't think that sentence is necessarily needed at all. I think that's, you're giving way too much judgment call in there to
Yeah.
allow some
I think that
flexibility in the field.
I think that was the issue too, is they were in the field having arguments over, well, I broke this down, so it's fine, and so.
Out there with a hammer hoe on sound aggregate. I'm in support of deleting the sentence. So we'll go ahead and I'll open it up to the committee for any questions or discussion on this topic.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, Jim Battle with Javendale.
Yeah, Jim, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Happy New Year, everybody. Maybe the intent was that 2 inch is just too large to be, I had a discussion about this on one of our projects, and the architect was saying, that's not decomposed granite. It's too big. It's more like rockscape, or I forget what the term is he used, but it's, maybe that, I don't know what the intent of removing it. Maybe that's because they think if it's 2 inch, it's not considered decomposed granite. It's some other surfacing. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's, as it was noted by both Jeff and Peter, that it seems, now we're just kind of guessing here, but it seems it may come in as a conglomerate and not necessarily a sound piece. And it's held together by whatever clay or calcium or whatever. And it would break simply under rolling. That's kind of what it sounds like that's in there for, but I wasn't there when that was written, put in there. I'm just guessing, but I think it's, in my opinion, it could be deleted from the, I'm in support, I would say, of deleting it from the publication to avoid any confusion, for the simple fact, avoiding confusion out in the field.
Yeah, that's why we have specifications. If you think that it's acceptable material, take the sample, take it to the lab, get it tested. Questions answered. And there's always going to be disputes and discussions in the field of, is the material per the, that I can't look at most gradations and say, yes, it meets the standard without taking a sample. So why would this be any different?
Right, fair enough. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, hearing none. Gordon, I will be sending you an email for additional miscellaneous corrections between Warren and I. We'll get that figured out for the different sections regarding the CIPP and CIPCP for those changes.
Sounds good.
All right, we're going to move into carry forward outside of the right-of-way cases from 2024. This is agenda item number 8. CMP underground storage detention retention tanks. Jose Rodriguez, you got an update on this one?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last time we presented the case, before we went on break, we had a lot of discussion about the gradation requirements that we have, because we have 3 potential options for backfill to be used on these systems. Just to go over it once more time, we have the normal granular backfill material that have to be compacted where you can take a test, but we clarified a lot of the notes on these revised details to provide the 2 alternates that are probably the most used right now, which is more of a gap graded rock material, and as well as CLSM, which we kind of condense all the language on that. The main issue that we struggle between myself and Zach at Contic, who's moved on, but there's somebody else for Contic that will help us out to close out this case, is the maximum aggregate size that's called out on the national ASTM and AASHTO. It makes a reference to a 3-inch material, and I know that sounds like a bad idea to think that we'll have a lot of 3-inch rock. The only thing we didn't come down to an actual maximum size determination is that we don't want to rule out all the potential options. I think from our discussion last time, the current standard is like rejected 3-8-inch chips. But that doesn't mean that other maybe stones might be able to work out better. And so that's where we kind of wanted to bring it up to the committee and see if we can also have more discussions at the outside right-of-way working group. We could just wanted to present a lot of this detail again, because we did clean it up quite a bit to remove a lot of the different installation notes that talked about backfill in different places to make it a little bit more condensed. But I think the biggest thing that we have to work out now is it's how do we want to define, or how to best define that, that rock gap created material that can be used, as an envelope, as a backfill envelope. We did, in some of the other suggestions that came up last time, there is an accompanying specification to it where we specifically call out the use of 3-inch minus gap, gap created material that is allowed. We talked about that. We were just having a hard time finding a name for it because we didn't want to call it rejected chips. And there is no such thing as a standard gradation for that material. So,
But yet it's an industry standard.
But
I
it's an
mean,
industry
yeah, you
standard.
tell anybody
I know,
you
it's
want
always been
3/8
called
chips.
if you call they know what you want, right?
Yeah.
But it's that's where we're kind of having a little bit of a harder time. I don't know if Jeff has a better way to maybe address what that material is.
Yeah. How do you specify a non-specific material?
I was actually hoping you weren't going to ask me that.
While Jeff's thinking of a clever response, is this the case that we moved over from
This is a carryover case. from-
2411,
Yes.
but it was initially, was this a case that was initially in the regular mag book that we moved over to outside of right away or
No,
no?
this has been,
No.
this has always been.
This is a
always
different
been
one.
outside.
Okay, I'm trying to get the cobwebs out. We had a rough start here the new year, so.
Yeah, so that's what we're presenting it for information and discussion. Again, it was a carryover case. We've had a lot of discussion about it. I think this version obviously a lot cleaner. I think it's just, definitely appreciate anybody's input on how to best define that.
Yeah, I think that's really about the last major item. that's
Yeah,
left on the list.
and the reason it's kind of broad, right, is we had some discussion, Peter, where you mentioned that I guess in the utility field, they're using other kind of more interlock material, rock, plus backfill as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ASTM.
Yes,
And the whole concept is try to grab something that's already specified that you can use. But here we've got almost that unique problem. It's a well-produced material that is hard to specify, but we know it's useful.
yeah, and the ASTM for this particular application for installation of pipe is pretty broad. It just defines backfill as an acceptable 3-inch minus material.
Now, maybe, I mean, maybe I'm off base here, but how about something of the nature that it's a gap created rock approved by the engineer? Since we're not able to put a gradation or anything.
Well, it's hard with the guys that are producing the pipe, making the pipe. They won't specify, they won't take any liability for them to tell what to put in there. Other systems, maybe not the same system, but like ADS is Storm Tech, those kind of things. They've been using 57 rock or number 4 rock has been the approved rock to go over that. I've not used that as far as on the CMP before, but it is I know we're not saying flowable, but it's the same kind of principle, and it does have it is something that can be measured. So I don't know if that's something we can do, but I've been having a really tough time with Contact lately on a couple different projects with them trying to this exact backfill and asking them, hey, I have an outside engineer saying they don't know how to backfill this thing. They want to have a specific way of backfill. And they're saying, once it leaves the plant, we don't tell you how to do anything.
So they're not providing any guidance.
Not providing anything. And that's really hard for a contract to take the liability.
Well, and which is discouraging because that CMP pipe really relies on that haunching.
Well, I would say even more than this, as me, I've, been installing it for, 20 years, and I would never do that right there. I would have that whole backfill, that whole 1 foot above that pipe, that whole profile be all the same chips. And I would always call out to be the fiber mesh around it or the filter fabric around it.
Keep infiltration.
It does. What you see there is
it's optional.
Again, because there is the potential for the pipe to be installed in a more conventional backfill and getting compaction of it, you would have to put it on a lift. The different kind of hatching that you see in there, just to differentiate the haunching and the initial backfill. But the detail does allow the use of rejected chips or seals from bottom pipe to the 1 foot above.
So if you're gonna haunch to spring line with chips, flowable chips or whatever, 3/8 reject chips, and you're gonna put a finer material on top of that, you would have to use a filter fabric in
Correct,
between.
and the detail that say that you're supposed to create an envelope around the.
Right.
around the
Could
chips.
could there be an asterisk added to the haunching thing and a note put on there, haunching permittable to the top of pipe or to 1 foot over the pipe? or
It is,
something?
it's already there.
Oh, is it there?
If
Okay.
you go scroll to Gordon, if you wouldn't mind helping.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
see.
there is a note for the alternate materials. It talks about that you are allowed to use it from bottom pipe to top of initial backfill.
Oh, okay.
Gap graded crushed rock fill right in there, or?
Yeah.
So a lot of, you know, contractors are going to spring line with rejected chips. And then from that point on, you know, a 3-inch minus is native backfill. So they're using native backfill. Therefore, they're getting failures or corrosive material. I mean, we find it time and time again with the CMP. Once you get a chip or a scratch on this pipe, there's no sense having aluminized, you know, and that's the big problem with this. And without the people that are making it won't come out and say how they would like you to backfill and protect their product. I mean, and also then you have the engineers, the private engineers on the other side going, well, we want them. And so you're, as a contractor, stuck right in the middle. And as a municipality, next thing you know, you have a parking lot crushed.
And that's
I
why we no longer
It's-
accept it in
A lot
Champlain.
about that out there.
It's,
huh?
and it's, I mean, I'm literally fighting this fight right now in Mesa. So it's crazy.
Mr. Chairman, if I might comment, this is Mark Taylor with Contact.
Yeah, Mark, please do.
Yeah, I just want to respond. I mean, the recommendations for the backfill envelope around CMP, we absolutely support using the same material from the bottom of the pipe to a foot over the top of the pipe. As the gentleman mentioned, one of the issues in the past has been that the requirement for high quality select backfill was only required up to the spring line, and then it was basically native material that was used above that. And that is not, we don't feel that that's a suitable application or use for the pipe. I mean, it really needs to have homogeneous material throughout that entire backfill zone as is shown on that detail now.
And is
So
that,
that's an improvement there, yeah.
is that for support of the pipe, or is that for corrosion?
Well, it can be a combination of both, but I mean, whatever material is used should be tested for corrosion potential and to verify that it is within the allowable, parameters, for the metal pipe and the coating that's used. But it's obviously very critical for proper structural performance as well. I mean, all of the national standards will delineate the select backfill zone as that area from the invert of the pipe to about a foot over the top of the pipe. And we certainly agree with that method. So, and as Jose mentioned, the detail shows that appropriately now, even though the cross-hatching just identifies the haunch area. But in reality, all of that material around the pipe would be the same material.
This does not allow native material to be backfilled above the haunch, does it?
No,
I didn't think so.
the options are, it refers back to section 601.
Yeah.
Your more AB type of material.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, I think that was one of the reasons we did this, was resolve that issue. If you go into most national standards for design purposes, when you're trying to classify based on bedding types, it assumes it all the way to above the top of the pipe.
So the split can be two separate materials, but both manufactured materials. Is that what
Yes.
I'm hearing?
yes.
Okay,
Can be, yes, but it should not be native material, compacted native, that I remember.
I would agree.
No, and
That's the corrosion issue. that
And
we
again,
have to
the
handle.
3-inch minus material, if you call, it now calls out a gap graded crushed rock fill, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be, it's not just your native.
Right.
The 3 inch is just, let's just call it a placeholder until we define what that actually
Yeah.
maximum aggregate size will be for the cross rock. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but again, going back to it, do we just want to say 3/8 of an inch, but then that will take away, you know, your number 57 stones and stuff like that.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, this is Mark Taylor again.
Yes, sir, Mark.
Trying to come up with a way to define these coarse aggregates. There are AASHTO and ASTM specifications that are existing that do a really good job of identifying those. And, you know, for example, the 3-inch minus, there's AASHTO M43 has what they call coarse aggregate size numbers, and they have a table that lists the gradations that define each of those size numbers. And it was mentioned earlier, you know, for example, a size number 57 stone, that's a pretty common, you know, like a 3/4 inch minus material. But they have many other stone sizes that go all the way up to 4-inch. But there's also definitions for, you know, 3-inch minus, 2-inch minus, and so on. If you know, would want to reference a standard that is already defining what those materials are, I would encourage you to look at AASHTO M43. For example, on chamber systems, like the ADS StormTech or our ChamberMax system, we require and recommend, you know, a gap graded stone, which is similar to what's being discussed today, for two reasons. Number one, structural support for the product, and also we depend on a certain amount of void space in that stone backfill because that becomes part of the storage for infiltration systems. So if CMP were to be used for an infiltration system where the pipe itself might be perforated, most often the design of that system will assume that there's some storage capacity within that stone backfill. And in order for that to be the case, the industry standard is roughly 40% void space, so porosity of 40%. The stone sizes from number 3 down through size 57 have all been tested pretty rigorously to identify, you know, that the void space is at least 40% or higher. So I would just recommend that you make reference to that AASHTO spec, and there's also an ASTM equivalent to that. And that would give you a real easy way to refer to the stone sizes. And, you know, like I mentioned, for ChamberMax and for StormTech, those products, if you look at their recommendations for backfill, we will list all of the stone sizes that would be appropriate, and it would range anywhere from size number 3 through size 57 stone. So that, I think, would be an easy way to at least have a reference for what this, you know, gap graded material should be.
Well, I see where you're coming from. I appreciate that. But to note that if you're going to use that bedding and backfill area as storage capacity, then your drainage engineer, your engineer is going to have to do his calculations on that part to quantify that as part of the stormwater retention system, right? So he's going to have a big say on it.
Yeah, because in those cases, then, you know, that particular project, you would use the CLSM option.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to.
That's,
No, I
I
think
think we're talking about future,
Yeah.
being able to expand to other options, which would then, would be an adaptation or a morphing of this spec to allow for, yeah.
Right.
Let me wade in.
Put on your mic, please.
Sorry, let me wade in just for a second too. You, in your alternate materials and compaction options, you list ASTM A798. And when I look at ASTM A798 under structural backfill material, it talks about a granular. Structural backfill material shall be readily compacted soil or granular material with no material retained on a 3-inch sieve. Select materials such as bank run gravels or processed granular materials not a gap graded product.
Okay, so there's a conflict there with the way we wanted to describe. The intent
Yeah,
was to
and
make
we
sure
could
it's-
we could easily then, if you were going to talk about a 3-inch minus granular backfill, we could easily utilize 701 select material. The base materials we have in 701, which is a 3-inch minus base, sub base material. We could easily use that as a quantitative way to measure what material to use. If you want to really use alternative materials that would be more crushed rock and get that interlocking kind of thing, I think you'd probably want like 57, something that's not tremendously large, but certainly would have enough crushed faces in it to get that interlock. Or even go into the smaller 3/8, you've got a lot more interlock there. I mean, you put it in place and you pretty much have whatever compaction you're going to get. There's not really any compaction force you're going to need to do to that. It's going to be what it is when you get the interlock. And in the valley here, at times we have a lot of those materials because they end up being a byproduct. I don't want to call them reject or anything. It's a byproduct of making concrete aggregates. You end up with those 3-inch minus materials, and you can sometimes find mountains of those things around, which the only reason I mention that is that makes it probably a less expensive type of material to use in those applications.
Yeah, and maybe Mark, I think you're taking over for SAC, but we can have a conversation. Maybe we can just narrow it down to a couple of options of number 57 stone, and then talking about also potentially the rejected chips. But the intent for that second alternate is that is a more of a cross rock, and also we were looking to make sure that we're verifying that on the application that we're making sure that the material is being placed, and then making sure that it's no yielding before we finalize the installation.
But I do see though on the 3/8 minus material, you are trying to put okay, I don't want to use sand. We really do want aggregate, right? We want it to be, so let's make sure we don't have too many fines in it, right? So I kind of like the idea of you saying that maximum amount passing the number 16, so that you have more crushed rock materials in those smaller sizes, not a bunch of an overabundance of fines in there that may or may not do what you're wanting to do.
Well, why don't we talk about this at the next working group meeting?
But Mark
I think this is a high priority item.
Mark is absolutely correct. If we want to go to ASTM or to go to AASHTO, both of them do have charts of gradation materials that we could refer to. But I think we might be able to still do it just with inside of MAG. If you want to use that 3-inch minus granular material, we could refer to 701 table, type A select material, kind of thing.
The original, I think the way it's laid out right now, the original granular option it's more of your AB type of material.
Agreed. Yeah.
We're just really looking to narrow down the cross rock.
But I think we need to, on the grounds of ease of installation and for safety, it should be something that doesn't need compaction. In other words, like, that's what I love about the number 57. You just place it and you're done. That's the ease of the installation, and it's safe because people don't need to get down there and compact or test any of this stuff. So I think that's what we need to agree on, something that doesn't need compaction.
Jim, a gap graded self-consolidating.
I don't know if there's such a thing.
The 57 grading isn't actually gap graded. It's a continuous grading. If it meets the 57 gradational requirements.
5 and 7, right?
Well, now, if you would want to do that, you would want to go to a 5 grading. A 5 grading would actually be considered a gap graded product. It wouldn't have the bottom ends in it that you have in a 57, because that's what it is. It's a blend of 5 and 7, right? So but I'm going to tell you, in the valley here, those materials will be very difficult to find.
And once
Trying to find a number 5 aggregate that really meets that gradation will be difficult to find. 57 you can find all day long, because obviously that's a very common concrete aggregate, and it has a high percentage of crushed material in it. Not 100% necessarily, but certainly a high percentage of crushed. If you go too much larger, like go to a number 4 aggregate, which is a 2-inch minus, you're going to find there's a lot of more rounded materials in there. It's not going to be nearly as much crushed, and that might defeat your purpose of getting that aggregate. I think you want to stay in the range of 1-inch minus to, I don't know, maybe number 16, you know, I mean, someplace in there, a number 57 and a 3/8 chip, or something in those ranges might be better to think
Yeah, no, I
about.
mean, that's really the whole.
Because you want real availability of those materials, because that's going to keep the cost down.
Yeah, but ultimately,
But they have to work.
That is probably the gap grade is the important part, right? You don't want to just default back to a granular material, but then you're back to compaction and back to
You are.
Jim's concern. The only thing, Jim, we did get a lot of feedback during the out of right away meeting, and just to finalize, so we can probably move on. But it's just making sure that we're just not dumping the material in there. That even if it's at the top of the application, to make sure that we're putting some dynamic effort in there to make sure that everything's settled in.
Yeah, that's true. And then why do we want the fabric to be optional? Shouldn't that be mandatory?
It's optional only if you're using the crushed rock, right? Because if you're using CLSM or
ABC
or ABC, there's really no need for the filter fabric.
I disagree. I think you should use the filter fabric always for any type of infiltration. I mean, you just keep the dirt rock separate. I mean, just
Maybe not for CLSM, but certainly any other materials potentially.
I think it should be mandatory. And the other thing is, I agree with some of the earlier discussion is a lot of this is being left up to the contractor, and we get these questions too, and it's like, you know, we say, well, it's on private property, we don't want to get too involved, but we don't want it to fail either. And engineer sometimes doesn't want to get involved. Your manufacturer sometimes is not available. It's just, I think we need to take the high road in this and maybe be more conservative. And you know, if it's too expensive, then the engineer can design, you know, something different. But I'd rather be, you know, a little bit more conservative, a little more tougher on some of this stuff, just because of the problems they've had with this stuff. So that's just my 2 cents. So.
Well, and I keep thinking of how this would be implemented in Glendale, and it wouldn't necessarily always be private property. It could be Glendale-owned property, just not right away, right?
This is your supplemental standards to your specifications. You're not writing this for the private industry. If they choose to use it, great. And we think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
It will. They'll use it, Peter. Believe me. So.
will. So there's no problem on identifying a higher quality.
Well, if we leave it up to the contractor, we're always going to choose the cheapest. That's it. I mean, you give us a choice. We're going to choose the cheapest, the fastest, whatever. We didn't, not necessarily the best. You know, that's all we want to know is how are we doing this?
So
Yeah, and I agree. It should be homogeneous too. That to me is a no-brainer too. So.
Sounds like there'll be more discussions at the working group on it.
Yeah, but this is good discussion, guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Get everybody in here. One thing to note though, once we start, the price will go up. All of a sudden, it's a commodity.
One last.
Don't call it reject, call it something else.
I can't remember specifically on our detail, our Chandler detail, but did we have the filter fabric on top of the pipe just to protect the pipe somewhat too? Okay, that's what.
Can you turn up the mic?
Hello, but I thought we might have had it laying on top of the pipe too.
We call it burrito.
Yeah, okay.
No, are you talking about the backfill envelope or the actual pipe itself?
Yeah, right on this area too.
No, we right now is not doesn't close to protect the.
Correct. I was wondering on oil Chandler detail.
So Chandler had a detail that potentially had the filter fabric on top of the
I
pipe
felt like it might have, but
to protect the pipe
for
from.
those occasions, the nicks and the dings and things like that, right?
Gotcha.
It's all you. Okay, maybe not. All right. Maybe.
I think what we're trying to accomplish here is to make something that's not going to be highly corrosive. It's going to resolve some of the problems. We can never resolve the inside issue.
Yeah.
Right.
It can clean, but if we can resolve the outside, that should go a long way toward longevity.
All for that.
Well, yeah, because the less damage, and you don't want to get people down in there. I've had track hose fall on top of this stuff, and then it just crushes like a tin can or an aluminum can. And you got to pull it out. It's you want to keep machinery away from it. It's too delicate.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next item. The rest of this can be sorted out at the working group, but thank you for all your comments and all the feedback from everybody. It's helpful for sure. We're going to move on to agenda item number 9. This is the outside right of way 24-D, as in dog. This is to add new detail 524 and section 665 for infiltration trenches. This one's brought to us by Peter. Peter, would you like to give us an update?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have not gotten any new comments since the probably July, August timeframe. Right now, it's just in the process of redrafting now that I actually have the CAD system to redraw, and Gordon's been helping me. But at this point, we're still waiting for any additional comments, anything new to go on there. I think the July date, July 1st, is the last revision we had. No new comments have been received.
But I can't believe I haven't seen it before. But there's a typo, the specification name. On the spec section.
Oh, on the spec. Oh,
Oh man, I've been spelling infiltration wrong this whole time.
Yeah.
that's me and my good fingers. Okay, fix typos.
I did share this with my environmental group, and they're really excited about the whole publication, plus, you know, this type of detail and whatnot. So I'll be looking for feedback from them. I'll be requesting additional feedback before we go to move it into any kind of voting.
That would be appreciated to get that. Our main reason for getting it in this year was so we could proceed with some of the other details that are going to rely on this. So didn't have to get in and pass last year, but we needed to get in and proceed. Other stuff that's going to reference back. So we have time on this.
Peter, one question on your boxed note 8. I know we talked about that regarding that. The definition of what is a dry well. Did you mean to have defined as a well, or did you mean that to say dry well, right?
Thank you.
It's drying well.
Yeah. Dry well, one word, right?
Does a well job of drying.
Okay.
Yeah, please review this. Let's get the changes in there. It's a combination of several different options that were provided by different agencies. And so if there's, I think one time we talked about even a 4th option, but it was really under pavement. It was not really outside the right of way. So we were able to exclude that. This is really meant for those locations outside the right of way.
All right, any committee members have any questions or comments on this case? All right, not hearing anything. We'll go ahead and move into agenda item number 10. This is working group reports. So we'll take reports from the Water and Sewer Working Group. Jim, you want to provide us an update?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So we didn't do anything after our last meeting in September. But we are anxious to get started this year, so we will be meeting same time, 3rd Tuesday, which would be January 21st at 1:30.
Okay.
I might try to go down there in person, time allows. So is that something we could do, Gordon?
Yeah, we can set up a hybrid meeting if it's going to work for you.
Okay. And again, we're going to just kind of pick up on some of the ones we've been talking about that haven't formalized in a case last year. With basically maybe a case where we're going to require a manhole basis, cast in place basis to be formed up. We're going to try to keep working and maybe get something on standard for mandrel testing for the sewers. Kind of see if the PEX pipe's going to still want to try to get back in the right of way. I don't know, Warren, was there any discussion on that on the off season?
Yeah, I was going to bring that in the potential cases, Jim. I was ready to submit that as an official case, the PEX-A.
Okay, great.
Trail spec. We have now adopted it in Chandler and put all the pieces together, and that would definitely help.
Yeah. Okay, we'll save that for potential cases. Great.
All right, great.
Thank
And
you, Jim.
joint restraints for DIP. We've always had some confusion on the details 303-1 and 303-2. I'd like to look at that. I think we need to clarify some of that stuff.
LR and LRN.
Yes.
Yeah, it took a little bit of head scratching to figure that one out. Gordon and
Yeah.
I sat down for a while.
Yeah, some strange math there. We got to relook at that. So
We did ultimately get it figured out, but not without a headache.
it's too complicated, especially for guys in the field. It just doesn't need to be there.
Once a person understands it, it's super simple. But
Yeah.
there's got to be some kind of guide to understanding it if we're going to keep it in the publication.
It's one that is very hard to be self-taught.
Yes, exactly. Good point. Good way to put it.
Yeah, so I think we want to try to make that a little more user friendly.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
What else? Probably going to get the fiberglass pipe section finished off for the reinforced fiberglass pipe as another option for storm drain and possibly sewer. We did get it in last year for the pipe jack and material casings, right? So, and then we'll see how the industry, there's still interest in revising the manhole detail frame and covers to make them supposedly stronger and lighter. So we'll see how that goes. So anyways, anybody have anything they want us to look at real quick? So anyways, so then we'll look forward to that meeting and get started on this. So thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the update or the report. Asphalt Materials, Concrete Works Group, Greg on the line.
Yes, I'm on here, Mr. Chairman.
Is it going to be you or Jeff that wants to provide this?
Either way, Jeff, if you'd like to go, that's fine too.
Well, since I didn't attend the meeting, it's going to be easier for you to do it.
Oh, the meeting has been a while ago anyway, so we haven't met in quite some time either.
We'll
So
make the comment that our next meeting will be January 16th, Thursday, January 16th, normal time, noon at ARPA, and we'll continue to talk about.
Right, so that's the extent of your report. I appreciate it. Outside of right-of-way working group, Peter, you want to provide a report?
Yes, we did have a meeting or two during the last group meeting, and it was really to continue working primarily on the two cases that we've already discussed, so I won't go into any detail on those. We are looking at additional cases coming up this year. I think stormwater harvesting basins will be the next one, which is the one that relied on the infiltration trenches. One of the aspects we've noticed is as these are coming forward is that we're starting to see, like, if we get the infiltration trench, we need to probably go back and look at existing ones. So as we continue to develop details, we're finding out there's some ripple effect that we probably have to go back and look at. So one of them I know is going to be looking at, as the infiltration trench moves forward. We'll probably add to that case to look at any prior case that has a reference to it. And similarly with the spillway case that was adopted last year, did find that in the existing MAG standards, there are some references toward a spillway in different details, specifically the curb cut one. So we're gonna have to go back and do some miscellaneous corrections on those. So as this moves forward, we got to make sure we catch the ripple effects of different details going through. I'm going to try to resurrect the dry well detail and the dry well specification, get that one going back again. I don't want to promise on the backflow preventers yet. We'll see how much time. I officially retire from other people's work on May 17th. Yeah, that's other people's work. That doesn't mean I'm leaving the industry by any stretch. It just means I don't work for anybody in particular now at that point. Work for everybody at that point. So I've got to just make it to that date. I am taking the summer off except for this committee and my committee work. And so I'm hoping toward the middle end of the year, I'll have a little bit more time to be working on some more of these.
Well, when you underpromise, it
Yeah,
helps. And then you overdeliver. Yeah.
it's, well, we'll see how far my wife lets me get away with doing certain things. So, but the intent is not to leave the industry. It is to continue supporting the industry as much as we
Great.
can. We do have our next meeting on January 23rd, I think 11 o'clock. It'll be a virtual meeting. And I think at that meeting, we'll also talk about some other potential cases as they move forward.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And I'm glad you're sticking around for us. All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The other potential working group, did you want to talk about that now? The ADA one? or-
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Warren. Is there gonna be a need for a potential working group for ADA? I was gonna hit it under potential cases, but does anybody, well, let's get to potential cases and I'll bring it up.
Okay.
Publish, we'll move into agenda item number 11, the publishing of the supplemental specifications for the outside of right-of-way document. Hopefully everybody was able to take a look at it and go through it. It's very well put together, in my opinion. I guess at this point, Gordon attached the final draft, the outside of the outside of right-of-way document. He attached this, and it basically brings together the final approved version of the specifications, the details, and the new cover. That's correct?
Yes. Couple years ago, we kind of approved the idea of the document and things like the forward. And last year, we approved all the cases that are included in the document. So this document basically brings all of those things together, plus the table of contents, and just kind of gives you a final clean layout of all of the work that's been done on it so far.
So what we're looking to do then with this committee is approve this layout and the way this thing is structured and laid out. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I just thought maybe this group would want to have a final approval of the document once they've seen the final version, kind of the final draft. And then we can, publish it on our website and make it available for people to use.
All right, let's plan on, everybody put eyes on it. I know it just kind of got put together recently, so everybody put eyes on it in the next month, 30 days, and we'll revisit this for possible approval at next month's meeting.
So I did want to bring up a couple aspects that everybody talked about these before. Start thinking how you want to utilize these in your with your agency. It's right now just going to be sitting there. It's not going to be something, as we've discussed before, that's going to be sent up for other approval. It's going to be outside the purview. So there's no rush. I mean, you can utilize them as you'd like to. You can not utilize them however you want to do that. But start thinking about that if you want to have any kind of approval process as this moves through over the next kind of
Step one is spreading the word because nobody's going to know about them.
Right. Yeah, I sent this over to my environmental group, and it instantly, I mean, they're in high support of it, but it instantly sparked conversation between engineering and environmental, specifically the pervious concrete, because we've used pervious concrete in Glendale, a few locations, our park and ride for one, right on 99th Avenue and Glendale Avenue, the northeast corner, and it's, the questions come up. Well, I don't want to get into the minutia of it, but yeah, everybody take a look at that, and let's look at approving or going through the approval process next meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Gordon, I had a question on this.
Oh, go ahead.
Does this need to go through the main, what is that, the main group of MAG to approve it like they do the MAG after we give a blessing?
That is a good question. I don't think it's necessary for it to go through. That may be a discussion that I need to have with my bosses here, is if this is something that we want to highlight for our management committee and regional council as something that just kind of make them aware that this is available or not. But that's kind of above my pay grade as to decisions on what's on the agenda of those committees.
Well, and to that point, it would definitely raise the awareness to
That's,
others that.
that's true. It would
Yeah,
help kind of introduce it to a wider audience.
Yeah, I don't think we need to be afraid of somebody saying, well, we didn't approve this. This has to be somewhat of an organic thing. It's grown over about a 2-decade period coming into existence. So if it doesn't come out right the first time, I'm not too panicked over it. I don't think anybody else should be. Let's see what people say about it. We just have a flagpole.
I'm in support of that. Thank you, Peter.
Well, I think everybody I've talked to is in favor of it. Says it's a great idea. So I don't see what would be the negative side of that. But you never know.
You never know.
All right. Any other questions from the members on this outside of right-of-way publication? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move into agenda item number 12. That's potential cases for 2025. This is where Warren and I were kind of chatting a little bit about possibly having an ADA subcommittee. I heard last year, 2024, there were grumblings about some ADA revisions. I believe Warren was working with Craig Sharp from Buckeye, or at least you guys had some conversations.
There were some drafts that were shared specifically, and Craig brought up, is that modification to the ramp for where we don't want pedestrians crossing a certain direction, where you introduce that 2-foot gap. So that's one of the items on the list. But a lot of them, other potential cases may come out of this final PROAG, like that particular gap there, such as maybe creating a blended transition detail, modifications to some of the slopes changed in the final PROAG. So I was thinking it might make sense to have that group just to kind of have an agenda and kind of go through what we think makes sense to either new details, revisions to existing details, traffic signal, push button pads, whatever. You know, it could lead to many things, but that was the thought.
I like it, and I can certainly rally the troops.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, Jose and I have chatted on the off season about maybe co-chairing that, if Jose's still up for that.
No, that definitely,
Yeah.
there is a need for that.
I have a Glendale representative that we can get in that committee also, subcommittee.
And I've talked to a few engineers offline, and they would be part of that, maybe helping draft the details, things like that too. So,
Okay,
yeah.
good. We have Buckeye, we have Josh Ford, correct? Josh, are you up to speed on any of the stuff that Craig Sharp was discussing regarding ADA?
Hello, everyone. This is Josh Ford. Yes, I am. I had some discussions with Craig and on those very issues, and I'm glad this is a point of discussion today, because I think it really behooves MAG to start to try to get ahead of some of this. You know, the PROAG guidelines were drafted for many years, about a decade. And then they finally made the final ruling, if you will, or the final set last August, I believe. And I can tell you from somebody who used to do a lot of hands-on ADA accessibility design in the right-of-way, that type of thing, was pretty familiar with the draft guidelines, that there was definitely some surprises for me in the final guidelines. In particular, the separation of curb ramps from the curb, where you're not wanting people to cross, as was mentioned. But you know, there may be some other things in there that could be of note once we really give it a closer look. And so publishing the final ruling was the first step, but then it's okay, well, now what? Well, it isn't technically, I don't think, legally enforceable until it gets adopted by DOJ and DOT, but there has been movement on that. The DOT actually, and this is kind of fairly hot off the presses, in December, issued a final ruling adopting PROAG as it relates to transit stops. And that ruling is going to become effective later here this month on January 17th, which means that any new construction or alteration of transit stops to the public right of way have to comply with those guidelines. And I think this is probably just the first domino, right, to fall, so to speak, as we look at the DOT and the DOJ probably ultimately adopting rules and incorporating the rest of PROAG. And so I think it really behooves the MAG to, of course, make sure that we check our own details to make sure transit stops are compliant, that type of thing. So might want to take a look at the bus fee detail, but to start to try to get ahead of this with the other details such as the curb ramps, sidewalks, that type of thing. So
I think that's the key that you just stated. We need to get in front of it. And I think this, having a subcommittee or a working group will get in front of it. Okay, it sounds like we need some collaboration then between Jose, Warren, and anybody else that would be willing to get into the committee, into the subcommittee, I mean, or the working group for the ADA and start looking at our stuff and, juxtaposed to the PROAG.
Yeah, this is David Fritz from McDOT. We are definitely interested in having someone on the committee as well.
Great.
Good.
Question is if we wanted to have like a introduction meeting this month, is that feasible, or would we have to kind of set that up for February for the public process?
I think we could set it up this month if we can kind of figure out a time that works for everyone.
Jose and
So-
I'll chat, figure out step one.
So Gordon, can we send out kind of an invite to the group and see what, start an email to the group and see who can throw who into this big party?
Yeah, we can do that. And I heard today several people who are interested, so we'll make sure that they're
Good.
included.
Great. Put everybody in the same pot, same room. We'll come up with some good details. It sounds good. At least revisit ours. Josh, I appreciate it. Thank you for putting that into perspective. All right, any other potential cases for 2025 that anybody's aware of?
Mr. Chair has mentioned the PEX-A
Sure.
material spec. I'll be introducing that.
Okay.
And then potentially after the water and sewer discussion, we've offered to do the precast reinforced concrete box culvert for Adriana. Having one of our engineers be part of that process, so.
Okay. And then there was Jim Badowich brought up a potential revision, for manhole, for, what was it, forming manhole, cast in place manhole bases, is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in support of that for sure, after having to replace pipe and pull out of the old manhole that's slobbered out and just a hot mess.
It just makes sense. I mean, anybody that gets into concrete, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it needs
Well, I
to
can
be,
tell
it
you
needs
right
to
now,
be formed up.
Right now, I have a very sensitive road closed. It's a connector between Grand Avenue and 51st Avenue, and it's been closed for 2 weeks because of a sewer pipe failed on us. And the way it's stubbed into the cast in place base, the amount of slobber on it, it took hours to chip away all that to get the old pipe out and get the new pipe, the new replacement pipe in. So I was always of the mindset, well, hey, if there's a potential to, core, because it's a infill project later on in the future, and you had to core that one side, maybe it's the west side of the manhole, that you would form just that side. But after spending hours out there with those guys trying to, get this thing completed, it dawned on me that maybe all sides should be formed. All right.
Well, we just had a problem with the opposite, where they don't using enough concrete, and it's, the impression ring has barely got anything to sit on, and if they're a little bit short, sometimes we actually witness these guys take AB or even dirt and just try to, make their own concrete right there in the ditch, and it's just, it's archaic, and it's just, it needs to be formed up. So, and I've already talked to one of the major contractors, subcontractors that do that, and they're in favor of it. And they said it's not, there's a lot of places around the country that require it, so it's nothing new. So.
Thank you, Jim. Any other potential cases from committee members?
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Materials Working Group, some of you may or may not be aware that ADOT is moving to eliminate Arizona test methods out of their specifications and go to AASHTO specifications. The biggest reason behind that is technician certifications, being able to have technicians that are certified for AASHTO specs in other states to be able to come into Arizona and be able to work without having to go through a certification within Arizona to be able to do the modified tests, which are the ADOT test methods and so on and so forth. ADOT themselves have decided, industry is all behind it, completely behind it, to eliminate those specs and go to AASHTO or ASTM, mostly AASHTO specifications. So we're in the process of actually doing that. Within MAG, we have some Arizona test methods that are in our standards. So ATTI is also working with them, and they're going to begin to be certifying technicians based on the AASHTO specs and not the ADOT specs at some point in time, not yet. So we thought it would behoove us to also start taking a look at making those same revisions within the MAG specs to eliminate those ADOT test methods and utilize the AASHTO spec. We don't think it's a big deal. There's some minor differences in the test methods. I don't think we feel like that they're a hill to die on one way or the other. So I think it'd be pretty easy for us to make that transition, but we should probably do it sooner than later because it's going to end up being that way anyway.
Back in my earlier geotech career, I had all those certifications and I always wondered why, because there's just a very slight change between the AASHTO and the Arizona test methods, but yet you still had to know AASHTOs, you still had to know some AASHTOs, and then you have to have an accredited lab, so you still need to know AASHTO, and they don't recognize Arizona test methods. So, and being that it doesn't sound like they would dissolve the ATTI, sounds like they would just be certifying for AASHTO.
Correct.
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 I love it.
That's the movement, is to unify that as to being AASHTO specs, and ATTI will obviously continue to be that certifying body, and it'll be easier for laboratory certifications because you can utilize AASHTO specs. It'll be easier for technicians. We'll be able to exchange those with other states to bring people in when we need to. It's all good stuff, in my opinion, in our opinion, industry's opinion. So we're going to tackle that in our working group, try to identify what those are within the material specs and try to make those changes, and it'll be probably farther up the year ways, but it'll end up being a new case too.
Anybody ask Leroy Hayduke, you'd probably leave a note for him, but he'd probably roll over if he heard that we were getting rid of AASHTO.
Well, this has come from ADOT themselves, so
yeah,
that's all good.
And Mike
They've
Ennifer
already accepted it, so that's all good.
All right. Those guys been around a long time, or they were around a long time. All right. Any other potential cases? All right, hearing none, we're going to move into agenda item number 13. This is the MAG staff report. Gordon Tice, go ahead and provide us with the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make this pretty quick. I just want to let you know that the online versions of the 2025 edition of the MAG specs and details are online. There's links in several places, but I think the easiest place to find them is if you're on the MAG homepage, just click on the specs and details button here, and it takes you to the page. And right at the top of that page, you'll see the PDF versions. So you can just click and open the standard specifications. You've also got the details as a separate file. On both of these, if you click on the logo, it'll take you to the table of contents where you can click on whatever detail you want to check out. If you click on the logo again, it'll take you back to the table of contents. So it's a quick way to jump around the document and find what you need. So if I'm looking at this detail that's got a star by it, was one that was updated, I can just click on that, jump to that detail, and check it out. Another thing I wanted to let you know is if you're going through the specifications and you happen across some ASTM spec and you click on it and it's a broken link, because sometimes that happens, let me know and I can make sure and fix those in the future. You know, there's so many in there. I don't check them every year. So if something changes and you notice something, please let me know.
And that doesn't need to be a miscellaneous correction. That's just a simple email to you, correct?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I think that's just an administrative thing, fixing broken links. But speaking of ASTM, I also wanted to let you know, especially if you're a fairly new member, that that MEG does have a subscription to ASTM that we provide to all of our member agencies. So if you need access to ASTM in your office, your engineering office, your utilities division, wherever you're working, materials lab, just let us know and we can hook you up and get your computer. It has to recognize the IP address of the computer that you're using. And once that's set up, then you can just access any ASTM that you need at any time. So the last thing I wanted to mention, as far as the specs and details books, we just got the printed versions delivered this afternoon right before the meeting. So those will be available for sale if you want to get some updated hard copies for your agency. There's a link that's on this same page. It says purchase specs and details book. So they're not on here yet. Obviously, we just got delivery today, but hopefully by tomorrow, we'll have an item where you can purchase the new book and either ship it to you or you can pick it up. For those of you who are members of the committee, if you want your free book, email me and let me know. For the people that are here in the room, there's a few in that box. You can grab one on the way out. But if you do want your own printed copy, email me. We'll get you on the list to have you shipped out one for free. And if you have any other questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Gordon. And for the ASTM subscription, take advantage of it, members. It's proved to be handy. I know I use it on some of my research and it definitely proved to be handy. So
yes, and we're paying for it. So the more use we get out of it, the more justification we have to continue that benefit for our member agencies.
Hey, Gordon, is there a limit for how many we can get per agency?
There's no specific limit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move into agenda item number 14, general discussion. Open it up for general discussion. I kind of had a question for the committee members regarding horizontal drilling. I had an emergency sewer repair on a streetlight project we're doing for a horizontal drilling that went through our sewer line. It was a sewer main coming out of an apartment complex. The unfortunate circumstances were that a bore profile wasn't given because it wasn't a large enough bore, long enough bore for horizontal feet to qualify or to be mandatory for that. What happened was it was mismarked. It was a sewer line, and for whatever reason, it was mismarked, and the contractor looked for it and he couldn't find it, couldn't locate it, and he decided to make an executive decision and shoot his bore without contacting the inspector that said, hey, I can't find this utility. So it ended up being a joint venture to do the repair. Got him back in service, but I'm wondering if anybody would be, if anybody has any suggestions on that, on directional boring and locating and hitting the sewer line. I mean, are you guys requiring, even though MAG doesn't require, are you guys requiring bore profiles before the bore shot?
At one time, at least, I know Tempe and Mesa has it in their supplemental specifications.
that a bore profile should be given for any length of bore?
I don't know. If it's
I don't
any
know,
length
but
of bore.
Tempe's the best at it because they had the biggest catastrophes when it all started going down.
I'll check that. Jim.
Yeah, I'm.
Okay, yeah, so this is all in reference to MAG section 608. I'm not looking at changing anything. I'm just wondering what,
If they met the blue stake requirements and they were 3 feet on both sides of the excavation and no pipe there, they had free reign to go ahead and go.
right.
They didn't have, that wasn't like, they shouldn't have had to call someone and say, hey, you missed mark. That's not,
No,
I think a
but
lot of times they should service.
they should, but I'm just saying legally, they didn't have an obligation to say, hey, you marked the line and I don't find it.
and that's the way we looked at it. We were off by 4 feet or whatever. There was a manhole out in the road and it was never adjusted. So it was kind of a spray and pray type situation. Looking back, we could have done a little more research, our Blue Stake team. But regardless, when you can't find, when it says there's a sewer line there and you can't find the sewer line, do you go ahead and shoot that directional bore anyway? Or do you get a hold of your inspector and say, hey, you guys have something here, but we don't know where?
I'd make the inspector say, go ahead and shoot it.
Yeah. So it was, that's why I said it was, ended up being a joint venture. We shared the financial burden and made it work, but all right, I wanted to get some input from anybody on that. Arvid, do you have any input on that? You do a lot of underground work.
I was waiting for you. Yeah, so I would respond carefully here and say you've got a little bit of integrity involved in these decisions. And Paul's correct that if you want to go by the letter of the law, but I mean, there's a certain level of integrity on a driller's responsibility, specifically in the trenchless industry, knowing that when we hit something, it's not a simple fix. So it does fall back a little bit, and I'm happy to hear that whoever it was partnered with you, because there is a certain level of responsibility to, especially if you know if there's a mark there, just being blunt, we never drill until everything is found. The only thing we've ever hit in our entire life was never even known to be there. And so that's an integrity issue that I think is just a reality that we all live with. But to answer your question in terms of what you can do in the future, there's nothing that says that you can't mandate in 608 that regardless of the bore, a bore profile has to be created. That's being adopted more and more. And the industry as a whole, every driller out there who's reputable has got bore aid. So it's not like it's a big deal to create a bore profile. It takes a little bit of extra steps and a little bit of time, but they do it for the most part all the time. And so therefore it is you as an agency, you got the ability to say, regardless of the size of the bore going forward, I want a bore profile before you set up and do it. And it's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things.
The way the table, the 608-2 table is written for small bores, anything under 6,000 feet is, and that's 6,000 feet's a long run on a bore.
Well, but it depends on how you interpret that, because on some of the projects, like if it's a traffic signal project where you're doing 4 intersections, 4 streets at an intersection,
yep,
you can be 1,000, couple thousand feet. So yes, 6,000 feet is a lot, but when you're talking some of the fiber runs, and back when this was put together, and Jim can attest to this, it was with industry as a whole, and they all agreed that it's really these long fiber run shots that are running miles down the road, putting in the quad where it justifies having a bore profile. So,
No,
there was a balance met between all parties that those numbers were set for that reason. But that was also at a point in time when bore aid wasn't as common as it is nowadays. Again, technology has gotten better and drillers have gotten a lot smarter and a lot just overall more careful because it affects them if they hit something. So therefore, the industry as a whole is stepping up and doing just a better job at providing that that pre-planned board path to prove that this is where we're going, this is what we're doing based on what's known.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not the only one out there then. All right, that's kind of my general discussion. Anybody else have any topics they want to touch on?
I have one. The length of these meetings is just seems since COVID, they just seem, last year they drove on to be in the 4 o'clock range every meeting. And our meetings used to be around 3 o'clock range, and I don't know why they've gotten so darn long and windy, but it's really hard for us in the industry to be here till 4 o'clock when we get up at 3 to go to work. I just wanted to ask the chair if he could look at maybe consolidating the time limit of how long this meeting lasts, because 3:30 is about our limit. You know, it's kind of tough for us.
Yeah, Paul. No, I know you're ready for a nap. I understand. Yeah, I talked to Gordon about some of this, but you know, obviously the outside of right of way stuff is adding on to the plate. I'm not saying that's Peter's fault, but I'll try to do my best to keep it moving. All right, anything else on agenda item number 14 for general discussion? We'll move into agenda item number 15, requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests from members or of staff for future agenda items? This is to put another item on the agenda, not necessarily a case, but just to add another number. All right, hearing none, we're going to move into number 16, comments from the committee. Are there any announcements from committee members they may want to share with the group? I think everybody heard you loud and clear, Paul. No, I encourage everybody's interaction at this meeting. That's what it's for, and I appreciate every single one of you being here. And for those that really get involved, I really appreciate it. I'd like to get more participation out of everyone at future meetings. So don't be shy. Feel free to come in. Feel free to sit at the round table with us if you can. If you can't, I understand. But with that, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Oh, you ready for a nap?
Yeah, yeah. Figure out what's good for you. The day of the week, kind of look at that. And maybe I'll give you a call. I'm just gonna look at the calendar.
Writers are like for me, but I know for the most part, work calendar work